We want to get into some of the graphics, and some of those pure numbers that I want to start with was, and you saw when Andrew put the odds up there. These are the odds, obviously, coming into the week for the Masters, and I like to get your reaction to these things, right? Scottie Scheffler at 5-1, Rory at 7-1. No real huge surprise there. Ludwig Oberg at 16-1. Already won this year. Kind of been a mixed bag performance from him otherwise. Colin Morikawa with his ball strikings at 14-1. Bryson at 16-1. Jon Rahm at 18-1. I think there's some people sleeping on Jon Rahm a little bit, is my sense. Right, there's Xander at 25-1. If we go back a year ago, he hadn't jumped into the phone booth and jumped out as Super Xander yet. Brooks is 30-1. You heard me just mention earlier in the show that it wasn't that long ago that he finished second alongside of Phil Mickelson. Victor Hovland just won at the Valspar, 35-1. But then as you go down this list, that's where I was mentioning to Michael Eaves, Sepp Straka 60-1. Corey Connors is 60-1, but Corey is one that the putter has to be working. Tony Finau that he mentioned is 70-1, and as I mentioned to him, that's one where Tony has to have the putter working. DJ, I mean, he's been so quiet, 80-1. Patrick Reed at 80-1, I think is an odds if you were doing this at the beginning of the week, kind of looking at it going, that might be worth taking a look too. You know what I'm saying? So when Dom and I were talking about putting together comparative data at the start of a major, right? And I realize as you know, everything starts to unfold, you either look like a genius or a fool with some of these things. But I think it's still interesting nonetheless. So Dom, let me ask you this in terms of, because I'm not trying to present this in such a way, folks, to say that I don't have the info in front of me. It's right in front of me. But the reason I wanted to ask Dom about this was, what was your thinking in terms of, and he did a number of different players. I will tell you, Scottie Scheffler, Rory McIlroy, Colin Morikawa, Ludwig Oberg, Bryson DeChambeau, Jon Rahm, Xander Schauffele. And as you're hearing that, you can kind of see, you know, why I was talking about the names that I was talking about. But what I'm curious about, Dom, so that you can give us a baseline in discussing this, is what information did you pull up? What was the source of your information, which is so much more important nowadays than ever? And then it provided as a baseline for comparison. Where do we go?
So, Andrew, what I'd like you to, hello, happy Masters Week.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I'm out of control excited.
Good.
I have all kinds of plans. All right, so, Andrew, put up, let's just start with Scottie Scheffler. We're going to use this as a template as I sort of explain my thinking here. So I did a number of players, and we'll do more players tomorrow. But what I have here, Matt, if you look at the list here, is, and you can see stats provided by DataGolf. DataGolf.com is what I use, and I'll explain why in a second here. Has this person ever won a major championship? Has this person ever collected a number of important victories? There you see Masters champion, PGA Tour wins, etc. How many times has this person played in the Masters? How many starts have they had, and how have they done in those starts? And then I have two statistics that, again, are coming from DataGolf, which I'll explain in a second. One is their true strokes gained number for this year, and you can see Scottie Scheffler is plus 2.55. That is per round against the field average, which is third on tour. And then I also have their true strokes gained putting number.
Now, is that third on tour or third in the world?
Third on the PGA Tour.
It.
They have separate stats for the Live Tour and for the other tours. They're separated out. So this is for the tour that he's playing on. The true strokes gained putting number that you see is 35th. And then I also did the same thing with just the Masters, the last four Masters for each of these profile players that I've done. You get the strokes gained number in the Masters, their average strokes gained per round over the last 4 Masters, and then their same thing with the true strokes gained putting at their last 4 Masters, their average.
That's
now, the
fascinating.
last two
In the
stats,
putting, Dom, just to mention it, he's negative
correct.
in that one.
A lot of them are.
And if you do the last 4 Masters, he won half of them, and he's negative in the putting category. Go ahead. Sorry.
Correct. And the last 2 categories are absolutely fascinating, and I love it. The Data Golf folks have something called a trend table. And what that trend table looks at is the last 20 professional rounds taking place for said player. And it has their true strokes gained number. What is that player's traditional average strokes gained over a certain period of time, and then it has versus their baseline. In other words, it's telling you how much better is this player playing than you would expect them to play in the last 20 rounds of professional golf. It's literally, like we always talk about a player being hot, this is a true statistic of who is hot and by how much and in the last 20 rounds.
Can I ask you a question with that? You're measuring that player's last 20 rounds, but
I'm not measuring them. Data Golf is.
But the standard against which it's being measured, which is
that player standard, not the
and
tour
how
standard.
many events is that player's standard established by?
I think it's the last year that they have.
So it's
like the last year. So it's not the career.
But if it's a year right up until where we are, it's going to be roughly 32 events, 32, 33 events.
Yeah, and this is just the last 20 rounds, not the last 20 events.
Oh, got it. That's an important distinction.
This is their last 20 rounds of professional golf. So it's literally who is hot right now, like absolutely on fire.
Okay, so what this is telling us is that Scottie Scheffler is he's off.
No, he's off a lot. He's playing a half a stroke worse per round
again
than you would expect him to do. Than you would expect him to do right now this second. Which honestly, Matt, you talked a little bit about it with Michael, and you and I have talked about it on this show. It definitely has felt, right? Now we have a stat to prove it, but it's kind of felt like Scotty's not quite there.
Yes,
Something's
except that I covered every minute of the Valero Texas Open with the leaders because I was doing the international broadcast. And I literally said it on the air. I feel like we were reintroduced to a Scottie Scheffler we haven't seen in a while.
Well, maybe he's getting Masters ready.
I don't know. Okay, what was the last?
There's one last final stat.
What's the one last final stat for us?
The last final stat is what they call, again, incredible stuff with Data Golf, their pressure tool. And what that is you can determine it based on what time period you want. So the time period I entered into their model is just this year for all the players that you're going to see. So what this tool tells you is how does a player perform entering the final round of a golf tournament compared to the average in that particular round of that particular tournament. And you can see that even though Scottie Scheffler's performing a little bit below his baseline on that trend table, he's not quote-unquote hot right now. Under pressure this year, entering the final round, he is still 2 shots better than the average. Still.
Right. So what I'm looking at this thing, the first 3 line items are qualifiers, and it is of distinction because Scottie Scheffler's only played in 5 Masters, and he's won 2 of them. So he's won 40% of the time that he's teed it up at Augusta National. That is mind-blowing. Okay, then we look at 2025 true strokes gained. He's 3rd. 2025 true strokes gained putting. He's 35th. If he could hang around 35th, Scottie Scheffler could win 10 times. That's what I always tell you about great ball strikers. Same thing with like Colin Morikawa, who we can look at in a little bit here. Right? So true strokes gained last 4 Masters, 3.62. Again, that one I'm not going to spend a lot of time on because he's won 2 of the last 4, so he's obviously been playing well. I do find it fascinating that his putting His true strokes gained putting was in the negative. Not much, but in the negative. Then when we look at his last 20 rounds, that he's just over half a stroke off from the average is fascinating to me. But then, again, on the other side of it, I look at it and go, you're also measuring Scottie Scheffler. So him being half a stroke off his normal baseline still has him third in true strokes gained at 2.55 positive. The pressure tool I love. I've been begging for years to come up with a strokes gain putting pressure stat. That was the argument that I've always had on the air with other analysts. You try to tell me that Jordan Spieth is one of the greatest putters of all time. I'm like, no, he's not. He's not even he's not even average. But he's a great clutch putter, which I think is a different stat. And maybe that's getting closer. So fascinating stuff from Scottie Scheffler. The only caveat I put on it is the one that I just told you was what Scottie did at the Houston Open to try to run down Minwoo Lee and then ultimately lose to him by one stroke was so impressive, and it made me feel like we were seeing a Scottie we haven't seen in a while, and what perfect timing, right? All right, let's take a look at Rory McIlroy with this. Dom, to what you built, he's a 4-time major champion, but he hasn't won a major in 11 years. He's won 28 times on the PGA Tour, 18 times on the European Tour. And just for clarity, qualification, there is some overlap there. He's played in the Masters 16 times, top 25 or better, 12 of those 16. He has 4 top 5s, and he was runner-up in 2022. Remember that magical finish on 18 from the bunker. All right, 2025 true strokes gained total, positive 2.92. And the reason why I didn't just go in order there, because you could see I like to pick and choose at times to tell a particular story, but this one I did because he's first in that category. First. Again, in order. True strokes gained putting, he is 10th. We are talking about Rory McIlroy. Remarkable numbers. Last 4 strokes gain, true strokes gain total at the Masters, positive. It's 3/4 of a stroke positive. That is very, very good. But again, I'm not sure. The same way with Scotty's, where I'm not putting a lot of stock into what they've done over the last 4, although Scotty's is incredible. I'm also not putting a huge amount of stock into what Rory did over the last 4, because ultimately it's about what he does this year. His trend table, as you can see from Rory, probably not a surprise. His true strokes gained putting is up almost 3/4 of a stroke. His trend table is up almost 60% of a stroke. Look at his pressure tool, true strokes gained.
So much, Matt. That's a lot.
Look at it, guys.
That means he's 2 or 3 shots better per tournament right now than Rory would normally be. Think about how good Rory is and how competitive and consistent he's been in the last 10 years. For him to be playing 2.5 shots better per tournament than you would normally expect him to be. That's freaking lot.
It's even more than that, what you're just saying. But it's remarkable, and that's the reason why I'm coming in. And I think Michael Eaves was saying the same thing in the last segment, that he's also high on what Rory's going to do. Okay, I promise you Colin Morikawa. Let's take a look at it. He's a multiple-time major champion, the 2020 PGA, the 21 Open at Royal St. George's. 6 wins on the PGA Tour. He has 4 European Tour wins, but again, you're going to have some overlap there. 5 Masters starts. He has 3 top 10s, and he was tied for 3rd last year in 5 starts. 2025 true strokes gained total, positive 2.91. He's 2nd. 2025 true strokes gained putting, he's positive 0.33 at 46. And you look at that and you go, that's okay. But again, you're talking about Colin Morikawa, and it's really interesting because I think that the modern game is putt for show and drive for dough. And so these top three guys that we're talking about who are great ball strikers and with skills amongst them in the ball striking area that are particular to each of them. For him to be 46th in putting is very good because he's one of these players, just like the two already mentioned, but even more so with Colin in the comparison to these three, is that if Colin is on with his putting on a given week, he wins. And on with his putting is not far off his season average. At Augusta National, I'm saying. So if his putting, he's 46 on average, but let's say he has a week where he's closer between 20 and 30, he wins. In my view, he wins. That's how good his ball striking is. All right, let's go to his trend table. 0.69. So, again, not quite 3/4 of a stroke like we were just talking about with Rory, but pretty darn close. And his pressure tool is very impressive, too, at plus 2.4. All right, and then I want to jump to Jon Rahm before we go too far. Andrew, could you pull me up Jon Rahm in this? He won the 21 U.S. Open. He won the 23 Masters. He won 11 times on the PGA Tour. 10 times on the European Tour. 2 Live Golf Tour wins. 8 Masters starts. And in 8 Masters starts, he has 5 top 10s and 3 top 5s, including a victory. I mean, I read these stats of these guys. It's good to do it because, for amongst other things, it blows you away. 2025 total true strokes gained total plus 2.12, first on Live. 2025 true strokes gained putting plus 0.59, that's 8th on Live. Trend table, negative 0.35 in the last 20 rounds. Pressure tool, positive 1.7. Xander, just because I'm running out of time here, I want to do this one quickly. Xander Schauffele, 2-time major champion, of course, last year in his glory. 9 PGA Tour wins, 4 European Tour wins. Again, like I've been saying in all of them, you have overlap there. 7 Masters starts, 4 top 10s, a third, and a runner-up. Are you kidding me? 2025 true strokes gained total, he is positive. Now, I know a lot of you be like, hey, it really seems like he's not been on the boil. I get it. And that's why it's still positive, even though it's ranked 94th. 2025 true strokes gained putting. There's the problem. Do you see it? For those of you there on the radio side, 160th ranked. And then you look at his trend table, true strokes gained versus baseline, negative 1.98 in the last 20 rounds. 2 strokes off per. That's incredible. So anyway, it's really interesting. We have some more interesting information such as this that we want to go over. I am curious, though, Dom, when you started to put these numbers together, did it validate what you already thought you knew, or was it a revelation to you with some of these numbers and what they actually say, given the fact that it's this data golf and you're using a different source?
I really love the trend table because it really shows you statistically hard proof, hard evidence who is playing the absolute best right now as we speak. Really the best. And it also gives you a window into, like Scottie and Xander are good examples of players that you feel like they're struggling. Something's not right, but you can't put your finger on it. And then you look at the trend table and you can see it. Like you just showed, Xander's almost 2 shots off what you would expect him to be per round. Something's not right there. And I do still feel like there's too much stock put in past Masters performances.
Yeah,
Maybe
that's what I would like
maybe I'm
with
insane
that.
for saying that.
I know there's value in knowing the golf course, and I get all that. But I
it's important,
didn't
but it's not
spend a
everything.
great deal of time on what they did the last 4 Masters compared to this year. I think form. I'm trusting that they have the experience. They're professionals. They're getting to know, even though there's some changes with some greens, blah, blah, blah. But they know how to play the golf course. It's their current form that's going to help them play the golf course.
So, Andrew, bring that in. I like that. This is just a quick runaround to show you, Matt, because I love some of those stats. Some notes. According to Data Golf, if you look at Daniel Berger, Joe Highsmith, and Michael Kim, look where they are right now in comparison to where they normally are on the trend table. Daniel Berger is second on tour. He's playing a shot and a half better right now than he normally plays per round heading into the Masters. Look at Michael Kim, 10th on tour, a shot around better than normal. I feel like that matters going into the Masters. I realize
that's what I'm saying. Form matters.